Hello and welcome back to the Johnny Gets Cash channel and to my series Chop to the Top, where I'm trading my way up from a cheap car to a supercar. Last time you saw me start with a budget of £19,132.10 after I sold a lovely Toyota Land Cruiser Amazon. With that budget, I went on to buy a 2011 Volkswagen Transporter T5 van. As always, I said I would let you know a full breakdown of costs on that van as soon as it is sold at the start of the next episode, which is now. So let's start today's episode by crunching some numbers on that T5 and find out where we are with the budget. As you know, I started with a budget of £19,132.10 to buy, fix and sell a vehicle. As I mentioned, I bought that lovely Volkswagen T5. So the costs are as follows. The T5 as I bought it, including all auction fees, was £8,418.50. Paint supplies were £67. New window switches were £6.66. Number plates were £12.37. The Sportline bumper was £157.49. New tyres, MOT and air conditioning work cost £405.41. A heater resistor was £24.46. Those lovely seat covers were £150 and a wheel refurb was £360. This means the total cost of that T5 when all said and done was £9,601.89. That meant I had £9,530.21 left in the kitty. The T5 sold for full asking price, which was £15,995. Now combining that with the remaining budget of £9,530.21, that means the total budget moving into this episode is £25,525.21. So we've got a budget of a little bit over 25 grand. Now I'm already really happy with that. If you remember, we started this series with a Toyota RAV4 that cost me just £150. Now if you're wondering how I bought a RAV4 for £150, please go back to the beginning of the series, you'll see the car. And in the meantime, I've made videos on how I come to find cars at that sort of value. So I get a lot of questions asking, do I charge my hours when I factor the costs here? And the simple answer is no, I don't. Chop to the Top is a hobby for me. I do it in between other paid work. So whereas I don't charge an hourly rate, once I've traded one up to the supercar, I'm going to keep that supercar for myself and that will be my payment for the efforts I've put into the series. So no, I don't charge my hours, my payment will be the supercar because, as I say, this is a hobby. So let's go and have a look at what I've bought for this episode. Let me start by addressing the elephant in the room. I'm sure you're wondering, with a budget like I've got moving into this episode, why have I bought something like this, a Mark III Mondeo? Well, I would answer that quite simply. I'll address it by saying, sometimes when you're trading up, it's not all about spending every single penny of your budget, or even anywhere near the limit of your budget. Sometimes if you can find a car that's a guaranteed £1,000 or £2,000 profit, that's the one to go for. And for me, cars like this Mark III Mondeo ST, they do just that. It might be a cheap car compared to the budget I've got, but it's more or less a sure way to add £1,000, £2,000, £2,500 to the pot. And when you're trading up and trying to get to a supercar like I am, that's a really useful thing. The other reason I've gone for this Mondeo is because, let's be honest, it's a Ford. I love Fords, you know I do. The Mondeo ST TDCi is actually becoming quite a popular car these days. I'll admit it's not ULEZ compliant, so it does have its limitations, but this 2.2 diesel engine is more or less bulletproof. People swear by them, and actually it's quite a fast car for a diesel. I've driven it and it really is impressive. You get a 6-speed gearbox, it's very comfortable, it's a very usable, practical car. It ticks a lot of boxes. Now, this particular example, although it looks a little bit tired at the moment, the reason I've chosen this one rather than one of the others that are for sale, and there are a few, is of course I got it for a great price, but more than that, this is an incredibly high spec example. This has got toys on it that I've never seen on another Ford, but we'll go through that in a minute. Now, as always, I won't tell you what I've paid for this car right now. The way this series works, I'm sure you're aware, I will reveal what I paid for this car and everything it's cost to get it ready once it is sold, and that'll be at the beginning of the next episode. So just like I told you about all the costs and what I made of that Volkswagen T5 at the beginning of this episode, it'll be the same for the Mondeo. You'll know all about the costs as soon as it's sold, and the beginning of the next episode is with you. So without any more being said about this particular car and why I've chosen it, let's have a look around. I'll show you what's good about it, what's not so good about it, what I think I've got to do to it. Basically, I think I'm going to be able to turn this one around quite quickly and get it shifted, and that comes back to what I said just now. If you find a car that you think you've got a safe £1,000 or £2,000 profit in and you can turn it around quickly, That's a very, very helpful thing in a trading up process, and that is what I think this Mondeo is going to do. So anyway, let's have a look around the car now before I get started with the work. So here it is, guys. It's a 2005 Ford Mondeo ST TDCi finished in moon dust silver. Now, of course, everyone would prefer that performance blue. I'll admit that is the color to have, but I've done my share of silver Fords, as you know, and they always seem to sell well. It's a sort of color you can't necessarily hate it. I don't think anyone really loves it, but I don't think you can hate it. Anyway, this Mondeo is a really, really good looking thing, to be fair. Very straight on the body. There's actually very little damage to the outside of it. I'll show you what it is I've picked up on so far, and it is minimal. So coming around here, the main thing to talk about, there's a little dent right there, just where it catches the eye on that rear door. Now, I'm actually not going to address that because it's in more or less the middle of a panel. To repair that and blend any kind of paint repair in there would be a nightmare. To respray the door, you'll never get a match. It's honestly more straightforward to leave it. And being that this car is a 2005 and it's covered just over 130,000 miles, I think little injuries like that on the bodywork, we can allow that. So I'm not going to go mad on things like that, but that is really the only damage. There's a sill cover where you jack it up, that's missing. It's not damaged, it's just something that's missing. You'll see just down here, one of the jacking point covers is missing. Easy to replace that, so it doesn't come under the banner of damage. So you'll agree, hopefully, it's a very, very straight example. I'm really, really pleased with it. Now, you've probably noticed that this passenger side window is down. Now, that's not done intentionally. That, unfortunately, is not how it's meant to be. The day I went to buy this car, the guy had come out to start it. He says he went to put the window down and it's just slipped off the rail, I think, because I can hear the motor working, but you know, I'm not going to get stressed about that. That should be an easy fix. At least the glass is still there and I can hear the motor working, so I don't think that's going to be too bad. Staying on the outside of this car, the wheels are in pretty good condition, to be fair. They're not hugely curbed up. This is a relatively cheap car, I will say again, so I'm not going to go down the route of getting the wheels refurbished. I think they will clean up pretty well, to be honest, and that is absolutely fine. That is probably something I should mention. When you're preparing a car for sale, you need to keep in mind your target audience. Who's the sort of person that's going to buy this car? What do they value? What is important to them? What do they want out of a car? This is not going to go to a collector, not going to go to someone who wants a concours example. So things like getting rid of every little scuff on the wheels would only waste my time and budget at this stage. So a really good cleanup on those wheels will be good enough. You'll notice I have got the filler flap open at the moment, and that is because when you pop the fuel filler from inside, it doesn't actually pop out, so something is wrong there. So just to save any issues, I've left that open for now. Minor fix, shouldn't be a problem. You'll notice the number plates are pretty deteriorated. That was mentioned on the last MOT, so super easy fix there, of course. The only other thing that was mentioned on the MOT as it goes was an exhaust blow, and this thing definitely has an exhaust blow. I'll show you in a minute. It can wake the dead. Talking of the exhaust, coming around the back, you'll notice there's an aperture exit there. So you think there should be a tailpipe here. When I first bought this car, thought it had an aftermarket back box fitted without the proper tailpipe, but having looked into it, the downswept exhaust that you can see in there is actually the correct exhaust. There's just a bolt-on tip that goes on there. Now, obviously that tip has been lost. I do, however, have a plan for that. I'm not going to go out my way to find a standard ST tip. You'll see that later in the video though. So then, moving inside the Mondeo, I said this thing had some spec. Now, obviously you've got your half leather seats. I think that's standard for the ST, but they're heated as well. This has got the screen in the dash. Now, I haven't actually seen that on a Mondeo ST before. I don't think that was standard fare. Maybe I'm wrong, you correct me if I am wrong, I'm sure. But in the back, now this is something I definitely haven't seen in a Mondeo before. These are what I think are factory fitted headrest monitors. So we've got a DVD player that runs through these screens. We've got individual controls. So if your kids are in the back, they can watch their own thing on each screen, I guess. And then you've got headphone controls and things down there. Now, bear in mind, this is a 2005 Ford Mondeo. I thought that was pretty impressive spec. So that, along with the leathers, the heated leathers, and the general trim of this car, is probably one of the higher spec Mondeos I've come across. So under the bonnet is pretty much as you'd expect. It's not terrible, but it's certainly not the cleanest engine bay I've ever seen. Just a good cleanup will suffice here. Now, the one thing I do think I need to change are the rams that hold the bonnet up. They are tired, and the same goes for the boot lid. So I need new gas rams for the bonnet and the boot. But other than that, I shouldn't have a lot to do in here. The car has got an amount of service history. It's not amazing, but it's certainly not terrible. It's got everything it needs. So this will just be getting a cursory service before it's sold. So we spoke briefly about that exhaust. Now, it has got a D-Cat exhaust. Now, fortunately, I do have the Cat included with the car. So if the new owner would like to refit that, they will have the ability to do so. So here's the plan. I want to get this one moving quickly. So thorough cleanup of the outside, a bit of a paint correction, make it look a bit smarter. Again, the wheels, as I mentioned, not going to get refurbed because they're pretty good. So really thorough clean there. Pretty good service. I'm going to send it into the garage that I normally use because I want that to be an invoiced service. So pretty in-depth service on the engine side of things. It's had major items like dual mass flywheel and things changed already. As I said, the car has been looked after. So really big ticket items that shouldn't fall in front of me, hopefully. That exhaust blow, I do need to sort that, but I did mention I've got a plan. The day I bought this car, and obviously I knew about the exhaust blow, but the same day I bought it, I actually went and bought a stainless exhaust system for it because I think the car would benefit from that. As I say, you've got to know your audience, and with a car like this, I'm going to fit that stainless exhaust because I think the sort of person who buys this would appreciate that. I think it'll add to the value of the car. It makes sense. You'll see what the exhaust cost me when we do the figures, but it wasn't bad. It really, in fact, it was probably cheaper than buying a standard exhaust for this car, so it makes sense in lots of ways. Anyway, back to the plan. Clean it, service it, fresh MOT, make sure there's no issues with it. Obviously I've driven it and it seems fine, but I'm going to spend a bit of time going through it because I don't want there to be any little gremlin issues that I haven't picked up on when I sell it. And essentially try and turn this one around quickly. I don't think I'm going to struggle to find a buyer for this one because they are popular cars. I mean, like I say, being a fast, practical diesel, I think there's lots of families out there who would value a car like this. So that is the plan. Not as in-depth as some of the ones you've seen. Not as expensive as some of the cars you've seen me do. But for now, as I said before, the plan is to not spend the whole budget, but just go for pretty much virtually a guaranteed £1,000, £2,000 profit to add to that pot. We need to keep the pot growing. And cars like this are absolutely peak examples of what can do that, certainly in my business. But there it is, that's the initial walk around. Hopefully you're as enthusiastic about this as I am because I think it's going to be a really nice car. So anyway, sit tight and watch me as I crack on with getting this one ready. Okay, the first thing I'm going to deal with is this window because I can't even wash the car until this is up and it's not staying up on its own. So first job is strip that door down and see why that window is not working. Let's get going with that. So that's the door stripped down. Now my first thoughts when I got in here was I'm clearly not the first person to be in here because the membrane is broken anyway. And I was going to take this off and have a look around and see what's what, but I think I found the issue straight away. As I said before, this window is slack at the moment, but it's still on its runners. But you will see, if you look in here, I'm sorry you can't see them, but it's a cable operated affair. Now this is your motor down here and you can see this red part. That is the end of the outer of the cable that controls the window. And you can see that this should be in this holder and it is hopped out. So what I'm hoping is, unless something's missing, I can just put that outer back in that holder and everything should work properly. So that's the plan. Okay, not a great start. Trying to operate that window doesn't seem to do much. What I think I might have to do so I can keep an eye on it is operate it from over here, which means reconnecting the switch. Right, let's see if I can see what's going wrong here. It's definitely trying, I can hear the motor trying. Let's see if I can help it. That's not a great start. Okay, this would suggest that something is stopping that motor from working efficiently. Okay, next step, take the motor out. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now that I have removed that motor, you can see these splined pieces, although the splines are good, they go into this yellow bit. Now that is a drum essentially with cables around it, so it can push and or pull the window up and down. Now obviously there's a lot of this rubbish in here. Obviously I'm assuming it's because it's got damp at some point, but it looks to me as if this cable has got out of its sort of, there's a runner on the edge of that drum, I'm assuming, and this cable's jumped out of it, got tangled around the edge, which means the motor's having a real hard time turning that. So what I'm going to have to do is pull that out, clean the trackways in that drum, put the cables back in, clean all of this up as best as possible, and then hope that as you move the window up and down, that rotates freely. Because if I try and move the window at the moment, you can see it's just moving on its runners, but it's not turning that at all. So something is not right. I mean, you can see how slack that cable is in there, just because things aren't turning. So let's clean that up next. Yeah, so it's actually a bit worse than I thought. You can see this drum, I've now removed it from the housing. These grooves are where the cable's supposed to run around. You've got a cable on either side, obviously for up and down. Clearly this has been wrapped around and forced at some point, and it's knackered. I mean, one cable's snapped, and just removing this is so dried out that one of the outers snapped on one of the other cables. So there really is no fixing that. What I'm gonna have to do is basically get a replacement part. Hopefully I can get one from a breaker, we'll see. As long as it's in good nick, I think it'll be okay. So basically what I need to do now is strip out the cables, get those out of the way, and go about finding some new ones. Okay, so now I've got that window mechanism out of the door, I can show you a bit clearer what the problem was. Basically this X pattern is a single cable that runs around each corner on a roller wheel. So as this cable comes around here and down here, we know that this drum wheel here had got all snarled up and the cable's clearly corroded and snapped. You can see that the cable, instead of running smoothly around here, where it is snapped, it's got caught in this nylon bushing, and that should run from there via a cable onto the bottom of this wheel here. The whole thing's just a nightmare basically. So rather than trying to change just the cable, it's easier for me to go and get a new window mechanism. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. Right, because I've got to wait for that window mechanism to come in, I might as well investigate this exhaust blow. This also gives me a chance to fire the car up and you will hear exactly how it sounds. Okay, so I've got the Mondeo on the ramp just because I wanted to suss out that exhaust blow. So I'll talk to you about that first, but I'm gonna have a quick look around underneath. Anyway, exhaust blow, don't even need to start the car. There it is, straight away, right on that bend. Really, really bad. In fact, it's going through in more than one place. As I say, I've got a new system for this car anyway, so I'll be happy to change that. So that's an easy one. I've got the exhaust in stock, we'll change that shortly. But while I'm here, let's have a quick look underneath, just inspecting the condition of the car in general. In terms of corrosion and things like that, it's really, really not too bad. Remember, this is a 2005 car with 132,000 miles on it, I think it's got. So I'm really pleased with the general condition of it. However, there's one thing which amused me slightly. I was doing a few minor checks, as I usually do when I've got a car on the ramp, and I'm here at the near side rear, and obviously this wheel appears to have a bit more brake dust on it, so I'm assuming it's some sort of brake bind issue. I thought I'd have a look at that later on, but I thought I'd check the wheel bearings while I'm here. Now, here is the rear wheel. Do you reckon that needs a new wheel bearing? I'm so surprised that's hanging on. I don't know how anyone's been driving this car with the wheel as bad as that. So, that's another one for the list. But the reason it's on the ramp, as I've mentioned, is to deal with this exhaust. So what I've got to do now is drop that under tray, get that exhaust off that's currently on there. I mean, that's going to go for scrap. and put the new stainless system on there. Now, I have got a downturned exhaust end for that new system, so it's not going to be a big fancy tailpipe or anything like that, but I'm hoping it'll stick a little bit further back in the car, so at least you'll see the downturn. I don't know if that's how it will look or not, we'll have to fit it and find out, but either way, it's going to sound better than it does currently, and hopefully allow the engine to breathe a little bit better. Right, so that is the old exhaust system removed. You can see everything I've taken off the car just here. And again, just to show you the damage, if we can call it damage, basically the rust which was causing that awful noise and the blow. This section of exhaust is just completely knackered. So, arguably, I could have just got a new center section of a standard exhaust. I didn't even price it up, I priced up a whole exhaust. But then I found this. This is a used, but in good condition, full stainless system. And I didn't pay a lot for this. As I say, the figures will be revealed in the next episode, but I really didn't pay a lot for this. It included a decap pipe. Now, obviously, that Mondeo already has a decap pipe in it. I know some of you will say, you know, it needs a cat to pass an MOT. If that's the case, then I will fit the cat that came with the car as well. Obviously, I don't want any problems with the MOT tester, and I don't want anyone who buys a car to have it in the future, so I'll take some advice on that. But basically, it's got a decap fitted at the moment. I'm going to keep that as the case with this new stainless. So that decap pipe is surplus. This could do a little clean up, but I'm not going to go mad on it. I'm going to refit that. As you can see, it's got a slightly downturned exhaust tip, but it's not actually as downturned as I thought it was when I mentioned it earlier. It's definitely going to look better than what was on there, because I wanted to fill that gap in the bumper. Now, this exhaust, in terms of brand, it is by a company called Long Life. Now, I think I've heard of Long Life actually, but that's not the reason I bought it because of the brand. I bought it because it's a stainless exhaust, and obviously the one I had was blowing like hell. Okay, that's the new stainless exhaust fitted. I love jobs like this, nice and easy, and they make a big difference. Now, what's more, I was completely wrong about this exhaust tip. I said it was a downturn, but now it's been fitted and I've got the orientation figured out. It actually looks perfect. It fills that bumper gap exactly the way I wanted it to. It's going to sound better, it looks better, it gets rid of that blow. It's a really, really good move. I'm so happy I've changed that. Now, while I'm under here working, I know that the handbrake on this car leaves a bit to be desired, so I'm going to adjust that while I'm here before getting on with that wheel bearing. Obviously, I'll check the other wheel bearings as well, but that's the next job, just because it's nice and easy, sort that handbrake out. So I'm going to crack on with that next. Okay, so I finished that exhaust job, so I can carry on with the window job. The new regulator is here. This is the old one. You can see the amount of damage and problems that this one suffers from. This new regulator is absolutely perfect. No evidence of that cable ever being snarled up in there like on the one I had. All of these bits appear to be perfect. So clearly it was a much more sensible move to just replace the whole regulator rather than try and restring a wire on this one, because that's got lots of issues. Piece of junk, basically. This new one will be going in the door, and I'm absolutely confident that will solve our issues. So I'm going to crack on and fit that now. Right guys, now that I've got that wheel removed, ready to do this wheel bearing, it's a bit of a better opportunity to show you just how bad the situation is now that the wheel is out the way. Just check that out. Honestly, I've never seen a wheel bearing that bad. I think that was a disaster waiting to happen. But anyway, onwards and upwards, let's get it changed. Okay, now that all the oily jobs are done on the Mondeo, I can start with the cleanup. Obviously it's not horrendous, but I know I can make this thing look a lot better. I really need it to pop so that when it hits the market, it looks like something special. Now, elephant in the room, you'll notice that there is a space saver on the back since I've done that rear wheel bearing. That's because the wheel that was on there, the tyre had a slow puncture, so I've dropped the wheel and the tyre into my local tyre specialist and I've told them to change the tyre. That'll be done shortly, but for now they need to keep hold of it, so I've just chucked the donut on there so I can get on with the cleanup. Anyway, let's crack on with that and get this thing looking a little bit smarter. Okay, now that I've finished the first cleanup of the Mondeo, so that's all the loose dirt, bits and pieces off the outside, I've done a door shuts, done the engine bay, done the boot area, things like that, I can start by preparing this thing to get the paint correction. Now I'm not going to go mad on it, but I'm going to start by going around the lower portion of the car with some tar remover just to get any stubborn spots of tar and road debris removed from the paint. Then I'm going to clay bar the whole thing before a light correction and polish. So that is the next thing I'm going to be working on. Right, so that is the machine polishing stage done. Obviously I need to clean the car up one more time before I can dry it and wax it finally, but the machine polishing portion of that work is now finished. I'm really happy with how it's come up. You probably couldn't tell before, but it was quite dull, the paint. You can tell it's never really been treated to a machine polish before, or really any maintenance. I think it's probably been washed with a dirty sponge its whole life, but it's coming up really well. I'm very happy with the amount of shine that's on the paint. Anyway, it's absolutely pouring it down outside at the moment, so I'm not going to go outside and wash it off quite yet. In the meantime, I'm going to get on with these headlights. Now, it may not be all that visible in this video, but they are slightly sunburnt on the top portion. Fairly common on modern cars with plastic headlights, and especially large headlights like this. The UV rays or whatever breaks down the protective layer on those headlights and they can get a bit cloudy. And in extreme cases, it can cause a failure of the MOT. I don't think it's going to be that extreme in this case, but it just doesn't look great. So what I'm going to do is scuff those back. I'm going to take a bit of sandpaper, I'm going to work through with some wet and dry, probably all the way to 2,000, 2,500 grit, something like that, and then polish them. But I'll show you that now, and the headlights will look a lot better when I'm done. And that's one of those jobs that helps to lift the look of a car. It will look a lot brighter and fresher all over just for doing those lights. So well worth the time spent now doing it. So that is the Mondeo finished, and I hope you agree with me in saying that it is looking fantastic. When this thing came in, it wasn't horrendous, but it could have been a lot better, and that's what I'd like to think I've achieved here. The car looks a whole lot better than it did. Now, there were a few curveballs along the way. You've seen everything I've done to the car, but let's start where I'm standing. So this window, of course, that was an issue. The whole regulator had to be changed. It wasn't a simple fix, but it was done. Next up, a little surprise, that wheel bearing. Now, it made some noise when I was driving it, but it didn't make enough noise to make me think it was as bad as it was. So I'm amazed that wheel was still on there when I got the car back to the yard, to be fair, but that definitely wanted changing. The other thing was that stainless exhaust. It wasn't just a case of replacing that old one with a hole in it, it was a case of upgrading as well, and I think a car like this, it warranted it. So I'm really happy to do that fix / modification to this car. I mean, it's not really a modified car in a truest sense, but little bits and pieces like that I think will add to the appeal to the right buyer. Aside from that, it's had that paint correction, that polish, and it's now had a coat of wax. And to be fair, for 18-year-old paint, it is looking very, very nice. As I mentioned before, a few little bits of damage like this little dent here, I wasn't ever gonna try and fix those. It just wasn't worth it. Now, in terms of the tyres, I have replaced a tyre. Another tyre, which was virtually brand new, was actually fixable. The garage managed to fix that tyre. There was a little bit of a slow puncture on it, but I have had to put one new tyre on this. Other than that, it hasn't been a huge amount of expense. Now, of course, I will go through all of the figures at the beginning of the next episode, just like I did at the beginning of this episode. So I'll reveal how much I paid for this Mondeo, how much everything has cost me to get done, and of course, I'll reveal what it sells for and therefore what the budget is moving forward in that episode. The reason I'm doing it like that, guys, is because now the channel is slightly bigger. If I reveal exactly what everything owes me in each episode, as soon as it hits the market, generally people who are looking for the cars that I'm selling, they've seen the episode, they know exactly what it owes me, and then they want to make an offer that's like £200 or £300 more than what the car owes me, and of course that's not workable. So the reason I'm doing it the way I am is because the car is going to hit the market very, very shortly. It's been a nice quick turnaround. It's been a really, really nice car to work on. I'm very happy with the result, and I think the new owner will be very happy with the car that they're getting. I've always liked this shape of Mondeo. I think there's still an appetite for them as well. And this particular one being the ST diesel version, it offers quite a lot. You know, you've got the economy, you've got the performance, you've got the practicality. There's a lot that this car will offer to its new owner. Anyway, with all that being said, that one is finished. It's about to hit the market as soon as it's got its MOT on it. So stay tuned for the next episode where I'll go through all the figures, and then you'll see the next car I'm buying, and hopefully it won't be long till I get to that supercar. Anyway, until next time, thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll catch you later. Cheers.